So now,
Yeah.
Maestro, if you let me, I will ask you just a few questions. And again, so much for your time. Ever since I was little, people have been saying that opera is dying, that it is a fading art form. But I personally disagree. I see more opera productions, more opera houses, more seasons, and more public and media interest than ever before. Would you agree with this statement? What's your opinion on the general state and health of opera today?
Well, I think we have to put it in a context these days because we are still negotiating a pandemic and how you revitalize and rethink opera. And I think this has been somewhat discarded sometimes because we professional opera singers were forgotten sometimes, where people were helping with money and helping with revitalizing one's career. Obviously, when you had already a career that was quite successful, managing that boat was quite easy. But the young singers now need us to put our arms around their shoulders. So I can only see now with opera. I love that when we do concert versions of opera. I love when we do one-act operas like Bluebeard's Castle, Gianni's Kiki, all these magnificent one-piece, and then share it with something orchestral. So always you can find something different. So therefore, I never see it as something that is dying. I just had 5 performances of Tosca in January in the Metropolitan Opera. Every seat was sold. They even sold the standing tickets to hear Sondra Ranowski. Not the Scarpia, of course, just to hear the Tosca. I sing a lot at the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden. It's very, very healthy there. The house has, of course, gone through a magnificent structural differences of bringing it to our very, very, sometimes difficult productions. Now they can aim higher because the houses have been reformed. And I see that in Covent Garden now. We've got great directors. I think opera sometimes goes through different phases. The singers, conductors. Definitely now it's the directors, people like Robert Carson, whose operas are going everywhere. And funnily enough, you talked about the Salome from Salzburg. That went to La Scala. It went to Covent Garden.
That was Luc Bondy, wasn't it? It was Luc Bondy's production, was it?
And that's the start, I think, of like the Robert Carson Falstaff. That's gone everywhere in the world. And I love this. I was brought up with a generation of Sir Geraint Evans, Stuart Burroughs, Gwyneth Jones, Margaret Price. They are the groundbreakers to sing abroad in Europe and in America. And Sir Geraint, for instance, with his Falstaff, he took productions to those opera houses.
So you mentioned how the pandemic affected singers' productions. But do you think it also affected the audience, young operatic audience? How do you think it affected the opera audience that shut down from the opera houses for so long?
I think the effect was careful and gentle in the beginning, but then you saw the animal in everybody wanting to hear live music and live performance again. So now you see it's not a matter of trickling back into the opera house. Now the performances are selling out, and I think there are some amazing singers in this generation as well, which helps the cause.
Maestro, this platform, Hablemos de Ópera, is mainly educational. We always aim to share valuable knowledge with our followers. And since we right now have with us in this conversation, you, one of the most important and distinguished bass baritones in operatic history, I'd love for you to share with us a little bit about your tessitura. Many opera lovers still find it tricky to understand exactly what a bass baritone is and what kind of repertoire this voice usually sings. Could you talk to us a little bit about that, and perhaps also about your own voice, your repertoire, and how you approach opera as a bass baritone?
Good question, Gerardo. And I have to go back to the beginning because I'm a farmer's son from North Wales. My father has sheep and cows. My mother worked in a school for special children, where music therapy was very important. So my mother was in a choir, my father was in a choir, and I would say my father has a better voice than me. But he was very nervous when he had to sing by himself. So he'd rather sing in a choir. And therefore, the interest was there. The words were on the kitchen table and on the kitchen cupboards for both the choirs, what they were learning. So I was singing in Wales in competitions, and I became quite successful in these local Eisteddfod, that we call it, and then into the national Eisteddfod. And then people were saying, you should go to London to study. And I think leaving 1 square mile, that's the most important thing. And I was confident to do that. And 5 years at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama in London really solidified my voice as a bass baritone. I had 2 teachers. One was an 89-year-old gentleman called Arthur Reckless, who was the kind of same generation as Sir Geraint Evans. He taught Sir Geraint as well. And then I moved after 3 years to a wonderful teacher called Rudolf Pierne. And he's the one that tried to push my voice to be higher as a tenor. But obviously I failed. So therefore I had to regulate myself through song first, Schubert, Schumann, Brahms, Pfitzner, before even tackling any opera arias, just that the voice was comfortable in the bass baritone repertoire. Then, of course, I started listening to people like James Morris, José Van Damme, Ferruccio Furlanetto, these magnificent singers, some considered as basses, but certainly they were singing bass baritone roles. And I was kind of tracking their development, but always on the side. Sir Geraint Evans was always ringing me and giving me auditions. He gave me an audition with Sir George Solti, where I got Antonio in The Marriage of Figaro in a tour that he did in Europe.
Okay.
So I started working with people like that. Then people kind of recognize you. And I've always, Gerardo, I've always had a good balance between opera and song, because I feel it's necessary to still work on breath control, how you feel when you're on that stage, how does nerves affect you, how you can regulate them. Lots of things fall into a category when you're singing in front of 6,000 people.
Sure.
So I think those are the things that really made me ready for the operatic platform, because then I was in the hands of conductors and directors.
Sure. Bass baritone, is it a hybrid tessitura? Are you more a bass? Are you more a baritone? Are you a bass baritone? Please explain us.
I'm undoubtedly a bass baritone. If you would like to think of different composers that wrote well for that voice, I would say that all the cantatas of Bach, I would say all the Mozartian operas, I could sing all those roles, even Conte Almaviva, Guglielmo, Papageno, although I never did sing Papageno. Figaro, Giovanni, Leporello, Mazzetto. That's for me is the crux of the bass baritone voice. You could say he's a lazy baritone, and maybe not one that likes to stay on the lower notes, but the middle of the voice should be very round, like a nice red claret bottle of wine. It should sound like a cello. Try and look on YouTube at Itzhak Perlman, the violinist, singing a little section of Tosca before Luciano Pavarotti sings.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember it perfectly. Yeah, and he has a very dark voice.
He has a beautiful bass baritone voice. It's right in there. It's like a George London bass baritone voice.
I agree.
And of course, all great violinists have good voices.
That I didn't know. Maestro, the operatic section of the program you will sing in Mexico City next week includes, among other composers, selections from Wagner's Die Walküre and Puccini's Tosca, two composers whose styles are often considered worlds apart, yet you manage to move between them with great artistry. What are the main challenges that each of these repertoires presents to you as a singer, as a musician, as an actor, and what do you think are the challenges or perhaps the joys they offer to the audience? Puccini versus Wagner.
Yeah, I always have to go back to what Hans Hotter said. The best singing he ever did was in his music room. And this is where you're teaching yourself about the opera, you're learning the libretto, you're learning the history of the piece, and you're learning those wonderful lines that have been written for you. And all you have to do is have the dedication to learn it as well as you possibly can. Of course, the conductors and the directors will put the shine on that coin for you and guide you and help you. But initially, everything that you do at home is what you then transpose onto the stage. I think I've had some incredible people within my career. It's like being a golfer. You build a team around you. I've had great accompanists. I've had great language teachers. I've had great vocal teachers. I have great movement teachers. And I have somebody somewhere all over the world that I can bring to talk about a piece and get their nuggets of information. So that's how this bass baritone did everything, you know. Tutto fa brodo, said Tito Gobbi about the role of Scarpia, you know, and I think he's so right. Everything makes that soup, all the ingredients. It's just there for you to learn about it.
And so I'm so happy to listen to you saying that singing opera is also a teamwork, not just an individual on stage, like bragging about his voice and his high notes, but there's a lot of work behind that, not only his work, but others' work. I think that's beautiful, and I appreciate you say that. Maestro, the second part of your program includes traditional songs, as well as some musical theater numbers. Do you think that there is really a solid dividing line or frontier between classical and popular repertoire for a singer? How different or how similar is your approach, both vocally and as an interpreter, when you move from one style to the other?
I personally, I feel I have to keep within my limitations. You know, as a Wagner singer, I was always thinking of myself as a lyric baritone, a little like Tom Stewart when he was singing Wotan. So I had to keep to that frame. When I sing Tosca, for instance, if I sing too much of the Te Deum, that spoils and really takes away the power from the second act for me always. So I have to be very careful with certain elements. Sweeney Todd, for instance, if you perform that on the stage, the Epiphany going into the last duet of the first act, these are very dangerous corners that you have to really negotiate cleverly. And somewhat be of a leader singer on that stage and keep that formula. No matter what you're singing, no matter what style, you have to keep to what your voice is comfortable doing. Otherwise, it's going to bite you in the behind like an awful Rottweiler dog.
Okay.
And, you know, so singing Handel, singing Bach, singing Lieder, singing English songs. I come from a background of Welsh folk music. So folk songs was the beginning of my training. And that's unaccompanied. But it has a technical ability of how to sing and sing in tune, Gerardo, but also manipulating the words and being able to sing in a language that everybody can understand every word. I wouldn't go to La Scala if if my Italian wasn't as near perfect as it possibly could be. And I sang with Abbado and Muti, you know, and they were both hard-working conductors who came really from a kind of repetiteur background also. And so, you know, yes, we were nervous. Yes, they are maestros. But goodness me, you do learn something from them.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Maestro, you're talking about Wales. You've had an extraordinary international career performing on the most prestigious stages around the world. But we know that your roots in Wales are very important to you, both personally and artistically.
Yeah.
How has your Welsh identity influenced your singing, your artistic choices, even your path in music?
Well, I always consider myself as being Celtic from the north of Spain, and we stole ourselves away from those dizzy heights and somehow went through Austria down to the Scandinavian lands and crossed over to Cornwall, started a language there, and then went to the mountains of Wales, fleeing somebody most probably. So therefore, the language is something that is quite important for me, and I think has always helped me in those beautiful languages like Italian, German, Russian, Hungarian. It feels comfortable. It's like riding a bike for me when I'm learning these languages. I feel really, really solid as a rock when it comes to having to sing in a different language and trying my best to be, you know, to give the colors, to give all the nuances that one has, to be learned from a coach, from a vocal coach, from a language coach. My last CD for Deutsche Grammophon was sea shanties. I sang sea shanties since I was 5 years old. You know, North Wales is 360 miles of coastline. So my brother and I were always by the sea on our bikes, you know, fishing on a boat or throwing rocks into the sea or just taking in the air and the space around us. You know, being on a farm was idyllic. I was in the tractor playing Hogan Hogegod in my tape, singing away Verdi arias, which I should never have touched before I went to the Guildhall. But I was curious. I wanted to learn when I went to the Guildhall, and I think Wales gave me everything.
That's beautiful.
To be on the stage, to be comfortable with performing in a different language, and trying to we're storytellers in the end, Gerardo. We have to be those storytellers that even in the most longest or dramatic of Wagnerian operas, we still have to be there telling that story.
Couldn't agree more with you about storytelling. Couldn't agree more. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Finally, now let's talk a little bit about Mexico. What is your opinion about Mexican opera singers and Mexican operatic singing itself, which is so popular and highly recognized nowadays around the world? What has been your personal experience with Mexican singers?
Well, I have to say, well, I'll show you now on that wall there. Can you see? That's a Rolando Villazon picture.
Yeah, I saw it.
And that was in 2006. He came to my festival in Wales, where he brought down there was 12,000 people in a field. So everybody absolutely loved him. His voice, of course, was magnificent, but his character and his joie de vivre, his charisma, his smile. We mentioned Ramon Vargas. I use someone that Ramon was very close to give me that final shine on that nugget that we talked about. A man called John Fisher. And I know John and Ramon worked a lot together. So yes, we are constantly meeting lots of different people. And my first trip to Mexico, and I really enjoyed it. Yes, the concert was cancelled in the end, but this happens all over the place. But the musicians in the orchestra, I loved talking to the young singers and their passion as well. and their eagerness to learn, and maybe their dreams to, yes, sing in Mexico, but also to spread their wings and sing somewhere else, which is my it's always been my dilemma. As I said, leaving my square mile was very difficult. Leaving the farm, leaving a girlfriend, leaving friends, leaving my parents, leaving animals, you know, a simple thing like the sheepdogs. I missed terribly. And I nearly pulled out of that first year at the Guildhall, but I said to myself, give it a good crack of the whip now, Bryn. Sit down, study, and let's see what can happen. And my parents were 100% behind me. And then towards the 5th year, the whole of Wales was behind me. And they were kind of living my success in their households as well.
So those are beautiful words and beautiful thoughts. I really appreciate. And I can only tell you there's a huge expectation in Mexico about listening to you live. You will certainly find a very warm and enthusiastic audience. I will be there among them, shouting bravo to you, as we will all do. Maestro, I can only thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to speak with Hablemos de Ópera. I'm certain this conversation will bring joy to many of our followers and, of course, to all those who will attend your upcoming concert on May the 27th at Sala Nezahualcóyotl. Maestro, thank you. And as we say in the opera world, in bocca lupo.
Oh, grazie, crepi lupo. Thank you.
Ci vediamo pronto, maestro.